Today I'm going to read to you from When You Reach Me, our next section, chapters 8 through 14. Chapter 8, Mom's Rules for Life in New York City. Number 1, always have your key out before you reach the front door. Number 2, if a stranger is hanging out in front of the building, don't ever go in. Just keep walking around the block until he's gone. Step 3, look ahead. If there's someone acting strange down the block, looking drunk or dangerous, cross to the other side of the street, but don't be obvious about it. Make it look like you were planning to cross the street all along. Step 4, never show your money on the street. I have my own trick. If I'm afraid of someone on the street, I'll turn to him, it's always a boy, and say, "Excuse me, do you happen to know what time it is?" This is my way of saying to the person, I see you as a friend, and there is no need to hurt me or take my stuff. Also, I don't have a watch, and I'm probably not worth mugging. So far, it's worked like gangbusters, as Richard would say, and I've discovered that most people I'm afraid of are actually very friendly. Chapter 9, Things You Wish For. "Miranda," Mom calls from the kitchen, "we need you to keep time. This egg timer ticking is driving me crazy." So I watch the second hand of the kitchen clock while Richard feeds Mom clues. Then Mom gives the clues while Richard guesses. "Sure, Richard, you keep time for a while." "Oh, can I play?" I ask after about 5 rounds. "Sure, Richard, you keep time for a while." Mom stretches and peels off her purple sweatshirt. As it goes over her head, her hair falls free of the collar and bounces down around her shoulders. As usual, this makes me curse my non-existent dad, who must be to blame for my hair, which is straight, brown, and just kind of there. I blame the stupid flat brown hair on my father, but otherwise, I don't hold any grudges against him. In my book, Meg is looking for her father. When she finally gets to Camazotz, which is a planet somewhere near the Big Dipper, where he's being held prisoner, this evil man with red eyes asks her why she wants him. And she says, "Didn't you ever have a father yourself? You don't want him for a reason. You want him because he's your father." So I figure it's because I never had a father that I don't want one now. A person can't miss something she never had. Richard is looking at the kitchen clock, waiting for the second hand to get to the 12. "Okay, get ready, go." I look down at the first card. This is something you spread on toast," I say. "Butter," Mom yells. Next card. "You drink a milkshake with this. You suck through it." "A straw," Mom yells. Next. "It's leather and it holds your pants up." "A belt." "It's sweet. You drink it in water after you go sledding." "Hot chocolate." It's good to play, to think of nothing but the next word and to have Mom think of nothing but the next words out of my mouth. We fly through the pack of 7 words. "You're good at this," Mom says when we finish with 5 seconds to spare. I'm smiling. "I really think you're going to win," I tell her. "Don't get your hopes up," she warns. "This is just the speed round. The speed round is the easy part. The truth is that our hopes are already up. Our wish list is stuck to the fridge with a magnet Mom stole from work. Trip to China. Good camera for trip to China. Wall-to-wall carpeting for Miranda's room. New TV. And Richard has scribbled sailboat at the bottom, though it's hard to imagine where we would park it. That's the official list anyway. Richard and I have our own secret plan for the money if Mom wins it. Chapter 10, Things That Sneak Up on You. The day Sal got punched back in October, Louisa came downstairs after dinner to have a conference with Mom in her bedroom. They decided that Sal needed a mental health day, which meant he was allowed to skip school and watch TV the next day. So the following afternoon, I walked home alone. I was doing a lot of talking in my head so that I would be in deep conversation with myself by the time I got to the Laughing Man. I was almost to the garage when I realized someone was walking right behind me. I glanced back and saw the kid who punched Sal. He was maybe 2 feet away, wearing the same green army jacket he had worn the day before. I was about to panic. I always know when I'm about to panic because my knees and neck will start to tingle. And then, before I had really decided what to do, I turned around to face him. "Excuse me, do you happen to know what time it is?" My voice sounded almost normal. That was good. "Let's see." He turned his head and looked back toward Broadway, like maybe there was a giant clock hovering in the air right behind us. "It's 3:16. I nodded, like I could see the invisible clock too. "Thanks." He didn't look like he was about to hit me, but still my heart was pounding. He pointed. "See that big brown building? Yesterday the sun started to go behind it at 3:12. Now it's about halfway gone." He glanced at me. "Plus it's 1 day later, and it's October, so the days are getting shorter." I stared at him. He looked down at his hand, which held a key. He pushed the other hand into his pants pocket. I don't have a watch, he said. Oh, I said, me neither. He nodded, and I wasn't afraid anymore, but as soon as the fear was gone, I filled up with guilt. Look at you, my brain said, chatting with the kid who punched Sal. My brain has a way of talking to me like that. I've got to go, I said, and I didn't let myself glance back until I got to the corner. When I did, the kid who punched Sal was gone. That was when I realized that he must live in the apartment over the garage, the one with the dead plants on the fire escape and bed sheets hanging over the windows. I'd forgotten all about the laughing man. His legs were sticking out from under the mailbox, and I was careful not to wake him. Chapter 11. Things That Bounce. After he got punched, Sal started playing basketball in the alley behind our building. Our living room windows faced that way, and I heard him dribbling his ball back there from about 3:30 until 5 every day. There was a rusted-out metal hoop with no net that made a clanging sound whenever he hit it. Sal and Louisa's apartment is mostly the same as ours. We have the same rectangular bedrooms, the same pull-chain light in the hallway, the same weird-shaped kitchen with the same unpredictable ovens. Theirs right below ours. There are differences. Their kitchen floor is yellow and orange linoleum squares instead of the white with gold flakes that we have. And Sal's bed is up against a different wall in the bedroom. But we have the same bathroom floor, these white hexagonal tiles. If I look at them long enough, I can see all kinds of patterns in those hexagons. Lines, arrows, even flowers. They kind of shift into these different pictures. It's the sort of thing a person would never try to explain to anyone else. But once, when we were little, I told Sal about it, and then we went into his bathroom to stare at the floor together. Sal and Miranda, Miranda and Sal. Sal played basketball more and more and talked to me less and less. I asked him 400 times whether he was okay, or if he was mad at me, or what was wrong, and 399 times he answered yes, no, and nothing. Then, the last time I asked, he told me, while standing in our lobby and looking at his feet, that he didn't want to have lunch or walk home. He didn't want to have lunch or walk home together for a while. Do you even want to be friends at all? I asked him. He glared at his feet and said, no, he guessed he didn't for a while. I was lucky, I guess, that this was the same week Julia decided to punish Anne-Marie for something. The girls at school had been hurting each other's feelings for years before Sal left me and I was forced to really notice them. I had watched them trade best friends, start wars, cry, trade back, make trees, squeal and grab each other's arms in this fake excited way, etc., etc. I had seen which ones tortured Alice Evans, who even though we'd started 6th grade, still waited too long to go to the bathroom and never wanted to say out loud that she had to go. These girls would wait until Alice was pretty far gone, jiggling one foot and then the other, and then they would start asking her questions. Alice, they'd say, did you do today's homework? In the math workbook yet? Where it says multiply to check your answers? How did you do that? And she'd desperately hop around while showing them. I knew the way girls all paired up, and Julia and Anne-Marie had been paired up for a long time. Julia I hated. Anne-Marie I had never thought about much. My first memory of Julia is from 2nd grade, when we made self-portraits in art. She complained there was no cafe au lait colored construction paper for her skin, or 60% cacao chocolate color for her eyes. I remember staring at her while these words came out of her mouth and thinking, your skin is light brown. Your eyes are dark brown. Why don't you just use brown, you idiot? Jay Stringer didn't complain about the paper, and neither did any of the other 10 kids using brown. I didn't complain about the stupid hot pink color I'd been given. Did my skin look hot pink to her? But I soon found out that Julia wasn't like the rest of us. She took trips all over the world with her parents. She would disappear from school and show up 2 weeks later with satin ribbons worked into her braids, or with a new green velvet scoop neck dress, or wearing 3 gold rings on one finger. She learned about 60% cacao chocolate, she said, in Switzerland, where her parents had bought her a lot of it, along with a little silver watch she always shoving in people's faces. I still don't know what Anne-Marie did wrong, but during silent reading period that Tuesday, Julia told her that as punishment she wasn't going to have lunch with Anne-Marie for the remainder of the week. Julia was big on announcing things in a loud voice so that everyone could hear. So on Wednesday, I asked Anne-Marie if she wanted to go out to lunch with me, and she said yes. In 6th grade, kids with money, even just a little, go out for lunch unless something is going on and they won't let us, like the first week of school when there was a man running down Broadway stark naked and we all had to eat in the school cafeteria while the police tried to catch him. Most kids go to the pizza place or to McDonald's or every once in a while to the sandwich place, which was a real name, but which we called Jimmy's because there was never anyone working there except one guy named Jimmy. Pizza is the best deal. $1.50 would buy 2 slices, a can of soda, and a cherry blow pop from the candy bucket next to the register. The first day together, Anne-Marie and I got lucky and found two stools next to each other at the counter under the flag of Italy. I found it slightly gross to eat pizza with Anne-Marie because she peeled the cheese off of her slice like a scab and ate it, leaving everything else on her plate. But she laughed at my jokes, which I mostly stole from Richard, who is bad at telling jokes but knows a lot of them, and she invited me over to her house after school, which more than made up for it. I would be spared an afternoon of listening to Sal's basketball, and the laughing man might be asleep under his mailbox by the time I walked home. Chapter 12, Things That Burn. Anne-Marie's apartment didn't involve keys. Instead, she had a doorman who slapped her 5 and a dad who opened the door upstairs. Did your dad take the day off? I whispered. No, Anne-Marie said. He works from home. He illustrates medical journals. Is your mom here too? She shook her head. She's at work. Anne-Marie's bedroom was about the same size as mine, but it had nice curtains and the walls were completely covered with all kinds of pictures and photographs, which I couldn't stop looking at. There must have been 100 of them. We've known each other for a long time, Anne-Marie said, sitting down on her bed, which had some kind of Asian bedspread and about 50 pillows on it. Who? She blushed. Oh, I thought you were looking at the pictures of Julia. That's when I noticed that her room was covered with pictures of Julia. Maybe not covered exactly, but there were a lot of them. The two of them in pajamas or in the park or standing together all dressed up outside some theater. Knock, knock. Anne-Marie's dad came in with these tiny sausages on a plate. I'm on a deadline, he said to me. When I'm on a deadline, I cook. Do you like mustard? Try the dipping sauce. I'll be right back with some apple cider. He was back in 30 seconds with a glass of cider for me, and he handed Anne-Marie what looked like plain water. She didn't seem to notice. Anne-Marie's rug was soft and spongy, almost like another bed, and I lay down on it. Mustard always makes my lips burn, but I didn't care. It was worth it. Chapter 13, The Winner's Circle. Mom is getting very good at the speed round. She almost always gets 7 words in 30 seconds now, no matter who is giving the clues and who is guessing. The second part of the $20,000 pyramid is called the winner's circle because you have to win the speed round to get there. The winner's circle, the celebrity partner gives the clues and the contestant has to guess, not words, but categories. So if the celebrity says tulip, daisy, rose, the contestant would say types of flowers. That's an easy one. Some of the categories are harder to figure out, like things you recite, poetry, the Pledge of Allegiance, or things you squeeze, a tube of toothpaste, someone's hand. The last category is always incredibly hard to guess, maybe things you prolong or things that are warped. The last category is what stands between the contestants and the big money, and Mom says it doesn't help that some of these celebrity partners are as dumb as a bag of hair. If Mom wins her first speed round and correctly guesses all the categories in the winner's circle, she'll win $10,000. If she wins a second speed round, the winner's circle is worth $15,000, and if she wins a third time, she'll go for $20,000. That's what I mean by big money. During the speed round, you can point or gesture all you want. If the word is nose, you can point to your nose, but the rules change in the winner's circle. No hand movements of any kind are allowed, which is why I'm tying Richard's hands to my desk chair. I'm using the clove hitch. You've got it reversed again, Richard says, watching me. The end should go through the loop. That's it, right. Mom is looking at us like we're crazy. Is this really necessary? She has to practice, he tells her, for when you win the sailboat. Mom rolls her eyes. I get my cards ready. I've written everything out in fat block letters so Richard can read them from a distance. I'm going to hold them up one at a time behind Mom's head where Richard can see them. In the real show, they have these big panels that spin around behind the contestant's head to reveal the next category, but obviously we don't have that kind of technology. Louisa's lunchtime notes are good, and she's written down what Dick Clark says at the beginning of every winner's circle. He always uses the same words. Here is your first subject. Go. We set the egg timer for 1 minute. Mom has to guess the names of 6 categories before it goes off. Here's your first subject, I say, trying to sound like Dick Clark. Go. I hold up the first card so Richard can see it. The card says, things you climb. Richard nods and starts giving Mom clues. A jungle gym, a mountain, high things, Mom guesses. Richard shakes his head. Stairs, things that go up, she yells. He shakes his head again. A ladder, things you climb. Ding, I say, and hold up the next card. Okay, Richard says. Paris, cheese, wine, fancy thing, Mom's yells. Romantic things. Fries, French things. Ding, next card. A pillow, Richard says. A kitten. Soft things, a cotton ball. Puffy things, fluffy things. Ding, next card. A baby carriage, a shopping cart. Things that carry things, Mom guesses. Things with wheels. Richard shakes his head, thinks, and says, a button. Things you push. Ding! The egg timer goes off. We all look at each other. Mom has only guessed 4 of the 6 categories. No one says anything. It's okay, Mom says finally. We still have 2 more weeks. Chapter 14, Things You Keep Secret. It was a while before I realized that the kid who punched Sal went to our school. We were working on our projects for Main Street, which is a scale model of a city block that we're constructing in the back of our classroom. Mr. Tompkins' class studies buildings every year. Mom says he's a frustrated architect. Why is he frustrated, I asked. It's complicated, she said. It had to do with the war. Teachers didn't have to go fight in Vietnam, so a lot of young men who didn't want to fight became teachers, instead of what they really wanted to be, she meant. Jay Stringer, who was a 12-year-old genius and the head of the Main Street Planning Board, had already built an entire cardboard building complete with fire escapes and a water tower, and he just started 2 phone booths when he said would have tiny doors that folded open and closed. Anne-Marie was busy with her pebbles and her extra-strength glue working on a stone wall for the park that Jay Stringer had approved the week before. Julia was making a tinfoil UFO that she said would fly up and down the street in an invisible wire. The UFO hadn't been approved yet, but Julia was going ahead with it anyway. She had written "proposal pending" on a piece of paper and taped it to the end of his shoebox full of foil and fishing line. Alice Evans was trying to make a fire hydrant out of clay, which has so far looked like pathetic lumps. Having to pee so badly all the time must have made it hard for her to concentrate. I worked on the diagrams for my playground proposal. A slide looked too steep and then too flat and then too messy because I had erased so much. I would have to ask for another sheet of graph paper, which always made Jay Stringer sigh and roll his eyes because he brought it from home. The classroom phone rang, and after he answered it, Mr. Tompkins asked if anyone wanted to go be an office monitor for a while. I raised my hand. The school secretary usually gives office monitors a few bit of honeys and Hershey's Kisses. I grabbed my book and rode the banisters down to the first floor, where I found Wheelie at her desk in the main office. She's called the secretary, but as far as I can tell, she basically runs the school. And she tries to do it without getting out of her desk chair, which has wheels, which is why everyone calls her Wheelie. She rolls herself around the office all day by pushing off the floor with her feet. It's like pinball in slow motion. The dentist needs a runner, she said to me, kicking herself over to a desk, where she picked up a sheet of paper. It's weird to go to school for almost 7 years and then one day discover that there's a dentist's office inside it. But that is exactly what happened. Wheelie stood up and I followed her out of the office and around the corner to a short dead-end hallway. I had never thought about before. There was one open door, and on the other side it was a real dentist's office. We walked into a waiting area, and I could see into another room with a regular dentist's chair. It had a little white sink attached and one of those big silver lights over it. The walls were covered with posters about eating apples and plaque and brushing your teeth. Wheelie called out, "Bruce!" and a guy with a short gray beard popped his head into the waiting room. He was wearing one of those green doctor tops, and he gave me a big, perfect smile. "Hey there, are you my first appointment?" "No, this is Miranda," Wheelie said. "She's your runner. I have a patient list right here." And she handed me the piece of paper. I saw a bunch of names and classroom numbers. "They go to the dentist at school," I said. "That's so weird." Wheelie snatched back the paper and said, "There are 98 sixth graders in this school. 89 of them are in attendance today, so if you can't do this politely, you can go straight back to your classroom and I'll find another one for the job." I felt my face go hot and actually thought I might cry. Sometimes when I'm caught off guard, I cry at almost nothing. The dentist put a hand on my shoulder and smiled again. He was like a professional smiler, which makes sense for a dentist, I guess. "My services don't cost anything, Miranda. Some families don't have the money to pay a dentist, or they could really use the money for something else." Oh, I was thinking, I shouldn't let my mother find out about this. She's always complaining about how healthcare should be free for everyone. I bet she would have signed me up for the dentist at school in no time. The dentist looked at Wheelie, and she forced a little smile and handed me the list again. Then she fished a warm bit of honey out of her pocket and gave it to me right there in front of the dentist, even though Louisa had once told me that you might as well whack your own teeth with a wrench as eat a bit of honeys. I set out with my list. "Don't get the kids all at once," the dentist called after me. "Bring them in twos." I decided to get the little kids first. I knocked on their classroom doors, and their teacher came hurrying to see my note, and the kids were handed over to me. I walked the 2 kindergartners to the dentist's office, read my book in the waiting room for a while, and then went back for the 2nd grader and a 4th grader. It was a lot of climbing up and down stairs. Not in a million years would I imagine really doing this. When I got back to the dentist with my 2nd drop, one of the kindergartners was already waiting to go back to class. She had this big smiley tooth sticker on her shirt. I brought her back to her classroom and then went for the last kid on my list, a 6th grader like me, Marcus Heilbronner, in class 6506. I'd never heard of him. I knocked on the little window in the classroom door, waving my paper. The teacher, Mr. Anderson, came over and I showed him my list. "Marcus," he called, and a boy stood up. It was the boy who hit Sal. He'd gotten a very short haircut, but he was definitely the same person. My brain started yelling at me. "It's the kid who hit Sal. He goes to your school? The kid who hit Sal goes to your school?" And meanwhile, the kid had walked over to where I was standing with Mr. Anderson. Dentist appointment, Mr. Anderson whispered. Marcus nodded, went back to his desk, picked up a book, and then walked right past me and out the door. I followed a few steps behind him. He knew the way. Welcome back, Marcus, the dentist called from the exam room. Nice haircut. The fourth grader was in the big chair, spitting into a little white sink. The other two kids were all stickered up and waiting to go back to class. Marcus sat down heavily and opened his book, which was called Concepts in Mathematics. Mr. Tompkins acted like everyone in our class was part of one big happy math group, but it didn't take much to figure out there was a system. Red math books for genius kids like Jay Stringer, orange ones for kids like me who did okay, and yellow ones for kids who left the room twice a week to meet with Mrs. Dudley, who did math support. Marcus's book was different, thick with a hard cover and small type. So I guessed that even though it was blue even further down the rainbow than yellow, it was at least the equivalent of a red. You like math, huh? I said. He looked up, and I got the strong feeling he didn't know he had ever seen me before, that he didn't remember punching Sal or talking to me about the sun. Yeah, he said slowly, like I might be stupid or something. I like math. And he went back to reading. I delivered the two waiting kids back to their classes. One of them was holding a shiny paper card, shaped like an apple, that said she needed a follow-up visit. There was a line for her mom to sign. Cavity, I thought grimly. When I got back to the dentist's office, the fourth grader was still in the chair and Marcus was still reading his math book. That was fine with me. I grabbed my book from the table where I'd left it and settled back to read. Some people think it's possible, you know, Marcus mumbled. What? He pointed at my book. Time travel. Some people think it's possible, except those ladies lied at the beginning of the book. What? Those ladies in the book. Mrs. What, Mrs. Where, and Mrs. Who? Mrs. What's it, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Which, I corrected him. He shrugged. What do you mean they lied? They never lied. I was getting annoyed. The truth is that I hate to think about other people reading my book. It's like watching someone go through the box of private stuff that I keep under my bed. Don't you remember? He leaned forward in his chair. They're traveling through time, right? All over the universe, right? And they promised that girl that they'll have her back home 5 minutes before she left. But they don't. How do you know they don't get her home 5 minutes before she left? I mean, there is no clock or anything. They leave at night and they get back the same time. Maybe they left at 8:30 and got home at 8:25. He laughed. You don't need a clock. Think. At the beginning of the book, that girl walks through the vegetable garden. Meg. Huh. You keep saying that girl. Her name is Meg. So she walks to the far side of the vegetable garden and sits on this stone wall, right? So she can see the garden from where she's sitting and talking with that boy, right? And then those ladies show up and take them away. So the garden is where they appear when they get back home at the end of the book. Remember? Oops, I skipped the line. Sorry. His name is Calvin. And so what if they can see the garden? So the garden is where they appear when they get back home at the end of the book. Remember? They land in the broccoli. So if they had gotten home 5 minutes before they left, like those ladies promised they would, then they would have seen themselves get back before they left. I put my book down and shook my head. Think about it. They haven't even left yet. How could they have gotten back already? They didn't even know for sure whether they would get back. It doesn't matter whether they knew it. That's got nothing to do with it. He leaned back and shoved his hands in his pockets. If they land in the broccoli at 8:25, they should be in the broccoli at 8:25, period. That makes no sense, I said. What if they couldn't do it, save Meg's father, and get back in one piece? Then they wouldn't have landed in the broccoli at all. But they did do it, right? Yes, but the end can't happen before the middle. He smiled. Why can't it? I don't know. It's common sense. Common sense. Have you read Relativity? You know, by Einstein? I glared at him. Einstein says common sense is just habit of thought. It's how we're used to thinking about things, but a lot of the time it just gets in the way. In the way of what? In the way of what's true. I mean, it used to be common sense that the world was flat and the sun revolved around it, but at some point, someone had to reject that assumption, or at least question it. Well, obviously somebody did. Well, duh, Copernicus did. All I'm saying is that at the end of the book, they don't get back 5 minutes before they left, or they would have seen themselves get back before they left. I gave up. It was dark in the garden, I said. Maybe they just couldn't see themselves from where they were sitting. I thought of that, he said, but they would have heard all the yelling and the dog. My God, what does it matter? It's a story. Someone made it up. You do realize that, don't you? He shrugged. The story is made up, but time travel is possible. In theory, I've read some articles about it. Wow, you really do like math, don't you? He smiled again. With his super short hair, his head looked like a perfectly round ball when he smiled. This is more like physics. Fine, you really like physics, don't you? Yeah. He picked up my book and from the table and flipped through it. Actually, I had almost the same conversation with my teacher right after I read this. She didn't understand me at first either. She? Mr. Anderson is a he. You really don't notice much about people, do you? Not Mr. Anderson. This was in second grade. I wrote a book report about it. In second grade? He put the book down. Yeah, back in Detroit where we used to live till last year. But I don't talk about this kind of stuff anymore, usually. Why not? He shot me a look. People don't want to think about it. I can see why, I said. It makes my head hurt. Still, you did better than most people. You're a pretty smart kid. I rolled my eyes. Gee, thanks. Okay, Marcus, the dentist chirped from the other room. You're up. I watched Marcus slip into the big chair and begin to read his math book again, holding it up with one hand while the dentist worked from the other side. The fourth grader waited for me by the door with his sticker on. Miranda, you can go back to your class, the dentist called. Marcus is going to be here a while. He can walk himself upstairs when we're through. So I picked up my book and hiked back up the stairs with the fourth grader. As we started down the hallway to his classroom, he stopped, and I waited while he peeled the sticker off his shirt, folded it, and stuck it in his pocket. Phew, that was a long one. Hope you enjoyed the reading of chapters 8 through 14. In the next couple of days, you'll do the comprehension questions that go with those chapters in your When You Reach Me Read Aloud book packet.